Okay. So contract management 101 is the topic today. Let's get started. Okay, so first and foremost, everybody has access to this. This is our contract review process. Just going through. Obviously, we receive a contract, a PO, some type of document with terms. If it's greater than 25,000, it needs to be pushed to contract admin. Otherwise, if it's below 25,000, then we go to management review. You guys are going to review that yourselves and provide a client with a response, either changes or an agreement to the contract, et cetera. So we roll through. We get a couple of arrows here that are wrong, but anyway. So once we get that order back, it ends up being filed, and it goes into Salesforce, et cetera. And we have that contract on file. Jason's working on some stuff to track those contracts, and we're going to have pretty soon. We're going to have well, we have a place in Salesforce right now, but we're going to require that the contract be added to Salesforce under the contract area. So just some basic stuff here: who, what, when, where. So obviously, greater than 25,000, speak with your sales manager. Just because a project, a contract is under 25,000, doesn't mean we shouldn't review the terms. Often with field service jobs, a small project can become a very large project very quickly with scope creep and schedule shift and so on and so forth. So should we have the same terms? I give an example here of a 25 to 250,000. That's not unusual. That should scare everybody to death. If we're very loose on our terms at 25,000 and there's scope creep to 250, guess what terms we have agreed to? So we've got to keep that in mind and understand that. Just because we're asking for changes from our customers doesn't mean that our customers will be, upset with us and go elsewhere. Our customers are concerned with the same exact stuff that we are. This is a difficult time in business, and everybody wants to make sure they're covered and protected. And just keep in mind, sometimes it's as easy as going in, marking up the contract, lining language out, adding language, whatever, and then signing and sending it in with your proposal. And if the client agrees to that, then you're good to go. That happens quite often. It's not unusual. So some common items, and by no means is this comprehensive. This is not every single thing you're going to run into, nor am I trying to make this so complicated that your eyes gloss over and so on and so forth. This is some common things you're going to see and that you see all the time, and just maybe keep an eye out for. So we got payment terms, responsibility of services, indemnity, damages, termination and suspension, limitation of liability, and dispute resolution. So we'll roll through these pretty quick. If anybody has any questions during, just scream out or wait to the end. Either way is fine. So payment terms. Our payment terms, our preferred payment terms are net 30. So immediately you look at a contract and you see that they're asking for 90-day language. That's not okay. We cannot afford to finance our clients, our customers' projects, and that's what we're doing when we get beyond net 30. That typically is not a deal killer for customers. They'll push back. Oftentimes they'll use paid when paid language and that type of stuff, and that's not okay with us. We can't afford to do that. And so I don't. Our best customers out there. You're not going to hear that from me where, they're a really good customer. We just let them have what they want. We can't do business that way. So standard payment terms, net 30. So we need to object to to any paid when paid language, and we should be paid for our services rendered regardless of our customers' compensation. They come back to us and say, well, we're not getting paid till XYZ. It's not of our concern, and we don't have to agree to those terms. Next thing, responsibility of services. So, this is kind of a challenging one. It can be written, very litigious, very, lawyers are lawyers. So, be careful of terms such as highest standard. And we're only required by law to perform at a certain level, accepted, standards. And you get into our insurance won't cover, claims where we didn't meet a contractually imposed higher standard. So you leave in terms such as highest standard, it gets to be very gray at that point. What does highest standard mean? Accepted practices within our industry is, you can look that up and you can define that. So just be very careful there if we can cross that out. And then, here's kind of an example. Services, I'm just going to read this, even though you see it. Services, and that it shall be responsible for all resulting damages and losses, regardless of whether resulting wholly or only partially therefrom, all at no cost to client, all without prejudice to any other right or remedy. So, getting rid of this responsible for all resulting damages and losses, regardless of whether resulting wholly or only partially, getting rid of that is valuable. Because basically what they're trying to say is, it doesn't matter what our responsibility was, we could be held accountable for damages that were beyond our responsibility. So I know that gets into some real lawyer stuff, but I think we're all capable of looking at something going, you know what? I think they're asking a little bit too much of us. This is a $17,000 job, and maybe it's $1 million project, and we have a little tiny piece of it. Indemnities, it's a complicated one because it's written a lot of different ways, but we've got to make sure that it's insurable as written. Again, we're required by law to perform services non-negligently, right? Our insurance will only cover claims that arise where we're negligent. It's possible we can perform, just as expected and still be in a claim. Our guys go out and do everything that they're supposed to do and still be pulled into a claim. So we've got to be very careful with these indemnity clauses that we're not required to protect our customer. And really what it's saying is we would be in a situation where we have no insurance to cover any of the costs, but we would still have to protect our customer based on that language. So we've got to be very, very, very careful. And there's different terms that are used in level 1, level 2 indemnity, and it's worth it to brush up on something like this. And again, I've always said in contracts, if there's a huge section, if indemnity covers 2 pages, you might want to read it. So just be very, very careful there. Damages. Really, there's only a couple kinds of damages that you'll see on contracts: consequential and liquidated. Ideally, we ask for a complete waiver, right? Consequential damages from our work, there's very little that can be considered something that we caused. So if we can get it waived, that'd be great. Damages like loss of profit, loss of use are not insurable. So that just becomes a risk that we take on. Liquidated damages, the first question I've always asked is, do we have complete control of the schedule? They want to impose these damages that if we don't meet the schedule, if we're not done by this day, then it's 25,000. I mean, I've seen millions per day in LDs in a contract, and Are you saying that our $250,000 contract is worth $1 million per day in LDs, and that we're responsible for that? It's just not. It's not acceptable. It's not a dollar amount or a requirement that makes sense. So we need to make sure that if we can remove the LD language altogether, that would be ideal. Not complete poor work, but complete our work in a timely fashion. With field service, this is typically what we're talking about, and there's a lot of different contractors, disciplines that are in front of us, and let's say we rarely have complete control of the schedule. There's somebody that's going to affect that beyond us and beyond our control. So be very, very careful. My answer would be if you could delete LDs altogether every time, that would be ideal. Termination and suspension, two very different things. So termination, we should have the same rights as our client, as our customer. Customer typically will write in that they can terminate us for cause. We've done something wrong, and they have the right to terminate us, but we also have the right. And that is very important, because if our customer is being unreasonable, our customer is putting us in a position where we can't succeed. It's impossible to succeed. We very well may want to exercise that right. So it needs to be a two-way termination clause. And then suspension, this is one that's overlooked way too often. Suspension would be where a client decides to suspend the project for an indefinite period of time. So let's just throw an example out there. We're on a job for 2 months, and the customer decides, okay, we need to suspend the project for 12 months. After 12 months, do you think we just pick up where we left off? Or is there going to be a considerable amount of work to kind of resurrect that project and to regain efficiency? We may lose that 3 months worth of work. We may have to retest equipment. So again, we have to look at suspension and make sure that we've got everything that we need there, if that suspension clause is in there. LOLs. This one it's actually very easy, but tends to be onerous. We just need to request a reasonable LOL, limitation of liability. So our customer is going to benefit from our services to a way greater extent than we'll receive in fees. It's appropriate to limit our risk accordingly. So here's some sample language that you can read, that something you can use. So basically, this sample language is going to say, it shall not exceed our contract price. And what that means is, you have a $25,000 contract, but they want to put $1 million LOL in there. Well, that's not reasonable. So we should have the right to, and do have the right to limit our contract to, our LOL language to the contract price. Now, if that $25,000 job, scope creeps to 250, then that limitation of liability would go up to 250,000 accordingly. And that's reasonable, and that's reasonable, on all levels. So, just be careful not to just allow some carte blanche LOL language in there and just be okay with it. Dispute resolution. We prefer mediation arbitration, and if we can get that as a preferred method, that's great. And this is kind of an exclusive manner of dispute resolution language. That would be ideal. Nobody wins if there's a lawsuit. A lot of money is going to be paid. I can guarantee you, when attorneys get involved, everybody's lost. So if we can get in the same room and we can sit down and say, hey, this is what's going on, we can figure out how to get through it. Unfortunately, I've been in too many of those over the years, and they're not fun. And but they're better. They're better than the alternative. So that is our preference. That's it. a lot of information. We're going to put out some documents that will help guide you guys with some good language you can just pull right from. You know, the intent of this, by the way, was not to say, hey, we need to go through every contract and we need to mark it up and so on and so forth. We do need to go through every contract, obviously, but we don't want the pendulum to swing so far that now, you know, we're marking things up to a degree that you know, it's preventing us from doing our you know, doing our work and winning and everything else. But there are some very reasonable items in there that we need to be careful of. Remember, one contract item left in that is unreasonable but agreed to could end WES. I said it could end WES, could close the doors. We all walk away. It's easier for the owners to say goodbye and say la vie. And that's not what we want. So let's make sure that we're, you know, each doing our job and reviewing and making sure we're not agreeing to, you know, egregious terms and owners' terms. So any comments, any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. This is Jason. I just want to add to what Tony said, and also when you looked at the flow chart, you have the ability to review these contracts up to that 25K level, and you will be getting the call it a cheat sheet, whatever it is, so the key terms and key things that to be looking out for. But no way does that mean that I don't care if it's a $2,000 contract. If you've read it and you're uncomfortable with it, send it to me. You're not required to sign it up to there. You just have the ability to sign to there if you think that it's a good, clean contract, or you've made changes to it that you're comfortable with. But at any time that you're uncomfortable, have questions. I know, Mark, you sent me over that CBRE contract, and I think it was only for $5,000, but there's a lot of ugly language in here that we've got to mark out. So it can be at any level, and Tony's absolutely right. A small contract can balloon into a very big contract, yet we're still sitting with the same terms.
Any other questions or comments for Tony? Okay, well, excellent presentation, Tony. Thank you. If no more comments or concerns, then we'll close our meeting today. You guys have a wonderful week of selling.
Let's see here. Hey, Chris, I just want to add really quickly that Matt Wallace is up next on deck for next week. Does that still work with your schedule, Matt?
Yes, sir.
And the topic is being Matt Wallace.
Bring your popcorn.
I don't have enough time in my schedule for that.
Okay. Well,
Thanks all.
okay, take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.